So The Boys Season 4, Episode 4 has finally released, and this episode was called Wisdom of the Ages. And I gotta say, this was a much better episode than Episode 1, 2, and 3 so far. And like I said, it was kind of a soft launch into Season 4, but for Episode 4, the boys are definitely back. This show re-solidified itself with this episode. I had such a great time watching this one, and I took notes along the way, so let's just go over, each and everything that happened in this episode. We're going to do the review and the breakdown for The Boys Season 4, Episode 4. Let's start now. So first things first, we have Homelander going back home, going back to the lab in which he was raised and tested on for his entire childhood. We have him kind of tormenting the people who tormented him when he was a kid, who did all of these test subjects on him and were kind of ruthless and didn't really care about him as a human being, as a person, while all of this was going on. So Homelander, he shows up, he brings a cake, right, to celebrate him coming back home, and then he just begins slowly and maniacally tormenting these people, getting inside their head, getting revenge for what happened to him as a kid. Now, we see him put one of the members of the lab into this oven that they had Homelander in as a kid, and they were turning up the temperatures on him as a kid, and he, expresses, hey, all of this really hurt me. And he essentially just cooks this guy in an oven, and we just watch it take place. We watch him burn up. We watch him get lit on fire. Absolutely insane. It almost reminds me of in Kick-Ass where, they throw the guy in the microwave and his head pops. It was kind of similar to that scene, but, in this one, he caught on fire and just melted. And then we also see, him picking on another member of the lab where he straight up lasers this dude's dick off. I mean, there's no easy way to put that, honestly. That's just straight up what happened inside of the episode. It was crazy to watch. Crazy scene. He's laying on the floor bleeding out. And then we see, another member come in and she's like, all right, put him out of his misery. Stop messing with him. So Homelander does. He steps on the dude's skull and then he begins tormenting this final lady who came in, who I guess was the lead of this lab. And she reveals a very, important piece of information, and that is that they purposely had psychologists come into that lab and instill Homelander with a sense of needing to be loved and always wanting and yearning for love. Like, they purposely put that into his brain. So this is why we see that out of the Homelander character, where he is always, kind of looking for approval from a guardian figure, you can say. Now, that's pretty much all that happened with Homelander. In my opinion, he had the most interesting moments inside of this episode, but that's not to say that there wasn't more interesting moments from our other characters, because there definitely was. So moving on to, the boys, moving on to Butcher, more specifically, we have Butcher rejoining the boys, even with some pushback from Starlight. MM is like, okay, come on. We need Butcher. He's dying. We want him to be useful for the team before he, kicks the bucket. And we see him really going through it in this episode. He takes a fall in the shower and he's just in a really bad state. I do not know how they plan to have this guy fighting Soups when at any moment during a fight he could just pass out and just start hallucinating. But yeah, he's still a member of the team, so that's good to see the boys all back together finally, which we knew was going to happen. I don't know why they try to throw, these little curveballs in at the start of the season, but the boys are back, and we'll touch on what they were doing with Firecracker in a second. But I do want to touch on, an Easter egg that they put into this episode, which was a little Easter egg to Gen V and what was going on with our Gen V characters, which RIP, one of the main members of the Gen V cast, one of their main members passed away, if you didn't know that. So they're kind of deciding how they're going to keep the show going, how they're going to do a season 2. Maybe I'll do a review for Gen V on the channel. I never had the chance to do that, and it was a very solid season, extremely underrated spinoff series from the boys. So I'm glad to see them, hint that that is still a part of this universe. Now, moving on to Starlight. Starlight inside of this episode, she's trying to get a bill passed with Congress. She's trying to collaborate with a member of Congress, and this bill would pretty much ban Soups from entering the army, being in police forces. Basically, it's just going to keep them on more so the entertainment side of existence. But this plan kind of backfires because Firecracker, which, by the way, the boys, they infiltrate Firecracker's RV. They look for information on her, dig up some information, find out she has some weird case with a 15-year-old. Firecracker got a weird case. Why is she around, right? So Firecracker just comes out onto this live broadcast, pretty much says, yeah, exposes herself because she's like, I'm not going to let you guys hold this information over my head. She exposes herself, uses this moment, and then she refocuses her attention, refocuses her energy back in on Starlight and starts exposing Starlight for some really damning stuff. I mean, she starts putting out Starlight's medical records. She starts talking about Starlight having an abortion from her and Huey, and that was absolutely insane. Starlight absolutely snaps after all of this is put out there for the public eye, for the public view. She shows up, Starlight pulls up at this broadcast and just straight up starts beating the shit out of Firecracker. There's no easy way to put this. I mean, she beat the living hell out of Firecracker. She did, which was extremely entertaining to watch because, she's trying to be goody two shoes all the time, trying to be, like the Wonder Woman, but you're not that. We know you have some darkness in you, Starlight. We know you're still a human being, which we end up seeing come out inside of this episode. Now, after that takes place, of course, it's absolutely horrible for her Congress bill. She's not going to have a favor with the politicians and with her fans really anymore after this event takes place. So the Congress bill is pretty much dead in the water. That plot line's, out of here. And of course, this was all put together by Sage. Now, another weird thing with Sage is she's been lobotomizing herself. She even has the deep lobotomizer inside this episode because something interesting about this character is her brain grows back no matter what. Like, you can injure any other part of her body, but her brain specifically will always grow back if it is injured. So we see her getting a lobotomy inside of this episode from the deep so she can dumb herself down for a few hours and just enjoy, the simpler things in life, which I guess is an interesting detail for her character. And then moving on, to Frenchie's character, we have, of course, this pointless love story, side story that came out of nowhere at the start of this season. Completely pointless. We heard nothing about this for season 1, 2, and 3. Why is this in here? This is our second to last season. Let's move on from this, but at least we finally get some payoff to, that storyline inside of this episode, which is that Frenchie finally reveals to the guy he's been sleeping with that, hey, I murdered your whole family. Sorry. And then the dude beats up Frenchie, and then we pretty much move on from that. Finally, I'm sure they're going to have that come back into play some way, somehow. We really don't need that storyline. Let's move on. Okay, now, the final thing I wanted to mention inside this episode, Huey reaches out to A-Train. A-Train gets Huey some Compound V so Huey can save his father, who is pretty much in a brain-dead state at this moment. And after getting the Compound V, we finally get some payoff for season 1, episode 1 of The Boys, which is Huey tells A-Train, hey man, we're all good. You killed my girlfriend way back, but since you helped me save my father, we're all good. They shake hands, which is a cool little sentiment. And then we move on from that scene. We end up at the hospital, Huey, his dad, his mom there. And we see Huey debating on whether or not he should put Compound V into his father's IV, right? And before they ever show Huey, administering this Compound V to the IV, we see it start shooting up in the IV and going into his father's system. And then his dad kind of jolts. And then that's where the episode cuts. So I'm not really sure what they were doing there, kind of making it seem like someone else other than Huey may have put the Compound V into Huey's dad's IV. It seemed like they were very intentionally making it seem like someone else was responsible, and that even though Huey wanted to do it and was about to follow through with the plan, someone else may have done it. I'm not really sure there what they were doing. I'm sure we'll see, at the start of episode 5. Let's drop an official rating for this episode. For Wisdom of the Ages, I give season 4, episode 4 of The Boys a 8 out of 10. It gets an 8 out of 10, a much better episode. I still think this show has, some heights that it can reach. I think it can go higher than this episode. I think we'll see it go higher in this episode in the next 4, but a very solid episode. I really enjoyed this one. And with that being said, that is our review and breakdown for season 4, episode 4 of The Boys, Wisdom of the Ages. Let me know your thoughts on this episode 4. Let me know your thoughts on the review and the breakdown. And if I missed anything, make sure you drop it down in the comment section down below. And if you don't know what we do here on Demigod ENT, we do movie reviews, movie reactions, and movie-based content. So if you're interested in any of that, you're in the right place. Hit subscribe, hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.